A small plant sits on the windowsill. At first glance, it does not look healthy. The leaves hang downward. Some of the tips are dry and slightly brown. The color that was once bright green now looks dull and tired. Many people have seen this moment before. A houseplant that once looked lively slowly begins to fade. The first thought that often comes to mind is that the plant needs new soil. Perhaps the pot is too small. Perhaps the roots have nowhere left to grow. So the usual idea is simple. Take the plant out of its pot, replace the soil, move it to something bigger, give it a fresh start. But something unusual sometimes happens. A plant that looks weak and close to giving up can begin improving without any repotting at all. No new soil, no larger container. The same pot remains exactly where it was. Yet the leaves slowly lift again, and the color begins returning. This can feel confusing at first. When a plant looks unhealthy, most gardeners believe the solution must involve more work. Digging, replanting, changing everything. Yet after watching indoor plants for many years, a quiet pattern begins to appear. Many struggling houseplants are not reacting to the pot. They are responding to a small condition around them. Something simple that often goes unnoticed. When that small condition changes, the plant sometimes responds surprisingly fast. The leaves relax, the stems straighten slightly. The plant begins to look less stressed. If this sounds strange, you are not alone. Many experienced gardeners have had the same reaction the first time they notice it. A plant that looked almost finished suddenly begins recovering, and nothing about the soil was changed. This does not mean every struggling plant will bounce back right away. Plants are living things, and each one responds a little differently. But again and again, a gentle adjustment can make a visible difference much sooner than people expect. Sometimes the improvement begins within minutes. Not a dramatic transformation, but a small shift. Leaves that were hanging heavily begin lifting just a little. The plant looks less tense, almost as if it has taken a quiet breath. The surprising part is how often this happens without touching the roots at all. Before explaining why this happens, it helps to understand how houseplants actually react to their environment. When we look at a plant, we usually focus on the leaves or the soil. But a plant is constantly responding to the air around it, the light it receives, and the way moisture moves through its leaves. Plants do not only drink through their roots, they also lose water through tiny openings in their leaves. These openings are called stomata. They are so small that we cannot see them with the naked eye, yet they play a very important role. Throughout the day, a plant quietly releases water vapor through these openings. This process helps move water from the roots up through the stems and out into the leaves. It also helps regulate temperature inside the plant. When everything around the plant feels comfortable, this system runs smoothly. Water travels upward. Leaves stay firm. The plant holds its shape. But when something in the environment shifts, the plant begins to react. One of the most common changes happens in the air itself. Indoor air can become very dry, especially during certain seasons. Heating systems, air conditioners, and even simple changes in weather can reduce the moisture in the air. When the air becomes too dry, the plant begins losing water faster than it can replace it. The leaves release moisture quickly. The roots try to keep up, but the balance becomes uneven. This is when leaves may begin to droop. The plant is not necessarily starving for new soil. It may simply be struggling to manage moisture in the air around it. Another condition involves air movement. A plant sitting near a heating vent, fan, or drafty window may experience constant airflow. That airflow increases the speed at which moisture leaves the plant. Over time, this steady drying effect can make a healthy plant appear weak. The leaves lose their firmness, and the tips may begin to brown. Many people assume the soil must be the problem, but often the roots are doing their job just fine. The environment around the leaves is what changed. Light also plays a quiet role in this process. When light levels shift, the plant adjusts how quickly it moves water through its system. Too much direct sunlight can cause leaves to release water very quickly. Too little light slows everything down. Houseplants are always trying to find balance. They are adjusting minute by minute to the conditions around them. This is why a simple change in placement can sometimes make such a visible difference. For example, moving a plant just a few feet away from a heating vent can reduce the drying effect on its leaves. Shifting it slightly away from harsh afternoon sun can allow the plant to regulate moisture more comfortably. Even turning the plant so that light reaches it more evenly can help relieve some of the stress it has been carrying. When that stress begins to ease, the plant often responds quickly. Leaves that were drooping may begin lifting slightly. The stems may look firmer. The color may appear a little deeper. It is not magic. It is simply the plant returning to a more comfortable balance. Many experienced gardeners have noticed this small moment. A plant that looked tired suddenly appears calmer after a small environmental adjustment. Nothing dramatic was done. The plant was simply given a better place to rest. Another factor that often surprises people is temperature difference near windows. During cooler months, the glass can become quite cold, especially at night. A plant placed directly against the window may experience a temperature drop that stresses its leaves. Moving the plant even a few inches away can sometimes create a more stable temperature around it. Plants notice these small differences far more than we do. To us, the room may feel the same. But to the plant, the air may feel drier, cooler, or brighter depending on its exact location. This is why observation becomes such an important part of indoor gardening. Instead of immediately changing the soil or repotting the plant, it often helps to pause and look around the environment first. Where is the light coming from? Is warm air blowing nearby? Does the room become dry during the day? These small questions often reveal simple answers. Sometimes the most helpful change takes less than a minute, or a plant may only need to be moved slightly away from direct airflow, or placed where light arrives more gently during the day. Once that adjustment happens, the plant no longer needs to struggle as much to hold on to moisture. Gradually, its natural balance begins returning. This is also why repotting too quickly can sometimes create extra stress. Removing a plant from its pot disturbs the roots. While repotting can be helpful when roots truly need more space, it is not always the first step a tired plant needs. Many houseplants prefer stability. They respond well when the environment becomes comfortable and consistent. Over time, gardeners begin to recognize the small signals plants give. Slight drooping, pale color, dry leaf tips. These signals are often the plant's quiet way of saying something in its surroundings has changed. And very often, that change can be corrected gently. Instead of digging into the soil right away, it can be helpful to observe the plant for a moment. Notice how the light moves across the room. Notice whether the air feels dry or warm near the plant. Sometimes the solution is simply giving the plant a slightly better position in the room. For many people, this discovery brings a sense of relief. Indoor gardening does not always require constant work. Sometimes it only requires patient observation. Plants have been adapting to changing conditions for millions of years. When we create a comfortable space for them, they often do the rest on their own. Of course, every home is different. Climate plays a role. In some regions, the air stays naturally humid. In others, especially during winter heating months, the air can become extremely dry indoors. Understanding your home's conditions helps you read what your plant may be experiencing. Over time, you may notice that certain windows are brighter in the afternoon. Others remain softly lit all day. Some corners of the room stay cooler. Others are warmer. Plants quietly respond to each of these places in slightly different ways. Learning to notice those differences is one of the most rewarding parts of caring for houseplants. And sometimes, when a plant looks tired or droopy, the solution is not replacing the soil or the pot. Sometimes the plant is simply waiting for a small change in its surroundings. If you're comfortable sharing, I'm curious what you usually do first when a houseplant begins to droop. Some people reach for the watering can. Others move the plant closer to a window. It can be interesting to see how different gardeners respond to the same moment. Indoor plants have a quiet way of teaching patience. They do not rush. They respond slowly, carefully, and often in subtle ways. When we give ourselves time to watch and learn from those responses, gardening becomes less about constant effort and more about understanding. Sometimes the garden improves when we simply step back and observe.